Some people enter your life like a half-written poem, beautiful, haunting, and impossible to forget. They don't feel like strangers. They feel like déjà vu wrapped in skin. You meet them, and something in you leans forward, not just with curiosity, but with recognition. It's as if they were written into your story before you even knew you were writing one. And just when the connection begins to deepen, just when you start to believe this might be different, they disappear. No closure, no full stop. Just a lingering silence where the ending should be. And so you're left wondering, why? Why would the universe allow you to fall for someone you were never meant to keep? Why plant a seed in your heart only to let it wither before it blooms? It feels cruel, pointless, but the truth is, it isn't. The universe doesn't operate on comfort. It moves by purpose. And some people aren't sent to stay. They're sent to stir, to break something open in you, to shake you awake. They arrive not to fulfill the love story, but to begin the inner one. Because sometimes, if they had stayed, you never would have grown. You would have settled into comfort instead of searching for clarity. Their absence becomes the catalyst. Their exit becomes the door that opens something much deeper within you. They were the first line of a poem you were meant to finish on your own. And maybe that's the point. Maybe not all stories need a resolution. Maybe some souls are meant to meet only briefly, to spark a fire that will warm you for a lifetime, even if they're no longer there to feed it. That's the heartbreak, yes. But that's also the miracle. We think we fall in love with a person, their laugh, their eyes, the way they made time slow down when they walked into the room. But more often than not, we're falling in love with something much more intimate, our own reflection. Carl Jung called it projection. When we meet someone who mirrors a piece of our unconscious, the part we've buried, forgotten, or never dared to explore, we mistake that reflection for destiny. They become a screen onto which we cast our deepest needs, fears, desires. It's not always them we're drawn to, but who we get to be when we're with them. This is why some connections feel like lightning, instant, uncontrollable, electric. Not because they're right for us, but because they activate something dormant. Sometimes it's love. Other times it's a wound. And occasionally it's both. That person you couldn't keep? They showed you what you're still searching for, what you've denied yourself, what you desperately want to believe exists. They may not have been the one who could stay, but they were the one who could show you what still needed healing. That's the power of the mirror. It doesn't lie, but it also doesn't last. Once the reflection has done its job, the person often fades, but the truth they revealed remains. You learn that what you felt wasn't theirs to give. It was yours to awaken. And when the mirror breaks, as it always does, you're left with the opportunity to go inward, to meet yourself, to no longer seek in others what you're learning to give to yourself. That's not a loss, it's a turning point. Because now, when love comes again, you won't just recognize it, you'll be ready for it. Not as a mirror, but as a match. There's a strange kind of ache that comes with wanting someone you can't have. The more distant they are, the stronger the pull. It's like trying to grasp smoke, intangible, yet intoxicating. You tell yourself it's chemistry, timing, fate. But beneath the surface, there's something deeper driving that attraction, familiarity. Not comfort, but repetition. A pattern your soul knows all too well. We're often drawn not to what heals us, but to what feels familiar. And if your history includes abandonment, rejection, or emotional distance, then unavailability can start to feel like love. It's not because you enjoy the pain. It's because your nervous system has been trained to confuse longing with connection. So when someone keeps you guessing, when they offer you just enough to stay, but never enough to feel secure, it lights up something in you that's been waiting for resolution since childhood. But here's the truth. These dynamics don't show up to punish you. They show up to expose you, to put a mirror in your face and say, this is where it still hurts. And so you chase, not them, but the feeling of finally being chosen, of finally being enough. The unavailable person becomes a symbol of something deeper you're trying to heal. But no matter how fast you run, you can't outrun the past. Because what you're chasing isn't really them. It's the younger version of you that still doesn't believe they're worthy of love that stays. Carl Jung believed that what we don't make conscious will return as fate, and maybe that's what this is. Not destiny, but a wound dressed in new skin. You think it's love, but it's a loop, and it will keep repeating until you stop running toward those who cannot give you what you need and start turning inward to the place where that need was born. Because sometimes the most magnetic connection isn't meant to last, it's meant to wake you up. Not everyone you love is meant to stay. Some people arrive like a storm, fast, intense, unforgettable, and then they're gone. And while your heart may scream that this is unfair, your soul often knows better. These people are not mistakes. They're messengers. They're catalysts. They come to shake the foundation, not to build the house. It's easy to look back on a short-lived love and call it a failure, to label it as a waste of time because it didn't turn into forever. But not every connection is here to become permanent. Some are designed to change you, to awaken something you couldn't reach on your own, a part of yourself that's been asleep, buried, waiting. And it takes a particular kind of soul to do that, not the one who holds your hand, but the one who lights the fire. You meet them, and suddenly things start moving. You begin to question, to feel, to remember. You see possibilities you never dared to believe in. And even when it ends, even when they walk away, or you do, you're not the same. Because they left you with something more valuable than certainty. They left you with clarity about who you are, about what you need, about what you can no longer ignore. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." That's what these temporary people do. They transform, sometimes through love, sometimes through loss, but always with purpose. So don't curse their brief presence. Don't reduce them to a lesson just so you can close the chapter. Allow them to remain what they were, a sacred interruption, a necessary detour, the kind of soul encounter that doesn't need to be forever to be unforgettable. Because some people come not to stay, but to spark the beginning of who you're becoming. We romanticize intensity. The late-night conversations that leave you breathless, the way your body reacts to their touch, the electricity that floods your skin when they say your name. It feels like fate. It feels like a sign. But chemistry isn't always a green light. It can be a red flag dressed in adrenaline. What we often call chemistry is sometimes just the nervous system recognizing familiar chaos. It's not always a soul calling to another. Sometimes it's your trauma saying, "I know this pattern." And so we chase what ignites us, even when it burns. We confuse emotional fireworks with emotional safety. But feeling everything doesn't mean it's right. In fact, the loudest connections can be the ones that drown out your intuition. There's a difference between a karmic pull and soul alignment. One is urgent, consuming, and often unsustainable. The other is steady, grounding, and quietly powerful. The karmic connection usually teaches through contrast. It exposes your wounds, demands your growth, and often ends in pain. But a soul-aligned bond doesn't shake you. It anchors you. It doesn't need constant sparks because it carries depth. Carl Jung understood this tension. He knew that the unconscious seeks wholeness, and in doing so, it may pull us toward people who reveal our unhealed parts. So yes, that intense connection may feel unforgettable, but it might also be unsupportive, unstable, unsuitable. And that's the mistake we make. We assume that because we feel so much, it must mean it's meant to be. But feeling is not the same as fulfillment, and intensity by itself doesn't build a life. Compatibility is quiet. It's in how they respond to your silence, how they show up when life isn't magical. It's not always fireworks. Sometimes it's a calm presence after years of storms. And when you finally meet that energy, the one that feels like peace, not chaos, you'll realize that true love doesn't always knock you over. Sometimes it gently invites you in. Right person, wrong time. We've all heard it, maybe even said it. It's one of those phrases that tries to soften the blow of loss. But deep down, it leaves us haunted. Was it really the wrong time? Or the right person revealing something we weren't ready to face? There's a cruel beauty in these almost loves. They arrive when you're in transition, when you're healing, when you're building yourself back up. And for a moment it feels like the universe is giving you a glimpse of what could be. But then something gets in the way. Distance, career, healing, fear, and the moment slips through your fingers. You try to rationalize it. You say things like, if only we met a few years later. But what if the timing wasn't a mistake? What if it was the message? Carl Jung spoke of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the patterns beneath our lives. When someone enters your world at exactly the wrong time, it's often not about timing at all. It's about consciousness, about what still needs to evolve in you. The timing is a mirror. It shows you the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It's not punishing you, it's preparing you. The right person at the wrong time is still the right person in terms of impact. They touch you in ways no one else has. But their role isn't always to stay. Sometimes their role is to show you what you didn't know you were missing, to wake you up to your own emotional readiness, or lack of it. And then they leave, not to hurt you, but to allow the work to begin. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to idealize them either. You just need to understand what they brought. Clarity. Maybe they weren't your forever. Maybe they were the key that unlocked a door you didn't even know existed inside you. Timing doesn't just separate people, it shapes them. And sometimes the person who leaves is the reason you become who you were meant to be. Not a cosmic joke, a spiritual nudge. There are certain things the mind will never understand until the heart has lived through them. No amount of logic, advice, or self-help books can replace the raw, unfiltered wisdom that comes from heartbreak. It's not because you're weak, it's because some truths can only be felt, not analyzed. And that person, the one who shook your world and left, wasn't meant to stay. They were meant to awaken. We often think healing means avoiding pain, but sometimes healing begins with walking straight into it. You needed to feel it, the longing, the loss, the sharp ache of being seen and then left. Because buried beneath that pain was a part of you waiting to emerge, that version of you who finally realizes what you truly want, what you'll never settle for again, what love is supposed to feel like when it's real. They came into your life like lightning, brief, bright, and unforgettable, and you wanted it to last, of course you did. But they weren't here to stay. They were here to strike, to ignite something inside you that comfort never could, to open a door that only pain had the key to. That's the paradox. The ones who hurt us most are sometimes the ones who hand us back to ourselves. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And maybe that's what this was, a crossing, a confrontation, a necessary unraveling. You thought you were falling in love with them, but what you were really falling into was your own depth, and the only way to meet yourself there was through the fire they lit and then left you to walk through alone. So no, you weren't foolish for feeling it deeply. You were brave, brave enough to let it break you open, brave enough to learn something no one else could teach you. Because the lesson wasn't in the relationship, it was in the aftermath. You needed to feel that. Not because you deserved the pain, but because you were ready for the truth that could only rise from it. There's a reason why the people who hurt us often feel so familiar. It's not random. It's not just bad luck. It's your shadow calling. Jung believed we all carry a hidden side, the shadow self, the parts of us we reject, suppress, or deny. And nothing brings that shadow to the surface faster than love, or at least the illusion of it. You fall for someone, and it feels magnetic, irresistible. But underneath the chemistry, there's a deeper pull, one that's not just about desire, but recognition. This person activates something raw in you, something buried. They make you feel seen and unseen all at once. And that contradiction is exactly where your shadow lives. They bring out parts of you that you thought you'd outgrown: neediness, jealousy, insecurity, fear. And instead of pushing them away, you start trying to manage them, shape them, hide them. You twist yourself just to be enough for someone who was never meant to hold you. And in doing so, you meet the version of yourself you've been avoiding. That's what shadow love is. It's not about the other person. It's about what they reveal. They show you your unfinished emotional business. They reflect your hidden stories. They pull back the curtain on your deepest wounds. And yes, it feels like chaos, but it's sacred chaos, because now you can't unsee it. You can't pretend those parts of you don't exist. You wanted love. What you got was a mirror, and though it didn't last, it brought you closer to something that will, the truth. Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Shadow love does exactly that. It interrupts the autopilot. It forces you to look within. So don't shame yourself for falling, for feeling, for trying. That relationship may have cracked you, but it also cracked your shell. And now you're closer to your whole self than you've ever been. Because sometimes the wrong person is exactly who you needed to meet the most hidden part of you. And once you've faced your shadow, you'll never lose yourself in someone else's again. We grow up believing that love is supposed to save us, that it comes to rescue us, to fix our broken parts, to carry us into a life we couldn't reach on our own. So when someone walks into your life and everything lights up, you assume this must be it, the lifeline, the long-awaited rescue. But not every love comes to save you. Some come to teach you. There is a difference between love that completes you and love that cracks you open. One feels like a safe harbor. The other feels like an earthquake. But don't be so quick to dismiss the quake. Because while the harbor gives you peace, the earthquake gives you truth. And sometimes truth is what you need most. These people, the ones you can't forget, don't always arrive to stay. They arrive to initiate your transformation. They wake up the parts of you that were sleeping, the dreams you buried, the wounds you ignored, the boundaries you never learned to draw. Their love doesn't save you. It exposes what you still need to save in yourself. You might think it was all for nothing because it didn't last. But what if the relationship wasn't the point? What if the real love story began the moment they left, and you were forced to rebuild yourself without them? Carl Jung taught that growth is not born from ease. It is born from the confrontation of your deepest fears. And these people, the ones who feel like both miracle and mistake, are often the exact souls who trigger that confrontation. So no, they didn't fail you, and you didn't fail them. You simply met at the point where your souls needed to meet, and once their role was complete, they had to go. Not because the love wasn't real, but because the lesson was more important than the lifetime, and that, in its own way, is still sacred. Some people enter your life under a contract your soul signed long before you met. There are no words, no explanations, just a deep, almost eerie recognition. You meet them, and something ancient stirs in you, not from this life, maybe not even from this world. And even before anything begins, some quiet part of you already knows this won't last. But it will change everything. These are the soul agreements we rarely talk about, the ones made in silence, the ones that say, I will come into your life, shake your world, and leave you wiser. These people aren't accidents. They're not coincidences. They're aligned encounters, stitched into your timeline with precision. They come exactly when your soul is ready to evolve, but your ego hasn't caught up yet. At first, it feels magical, fated. The chemistry is electric, the connection undeniable. You convince yourself this must be forever. But behind the scenes, the contract is already playing out. They've come to hold a mirror to your deepest patterns, to help you remember what you forgot, to push you toward a version of yourself you wouldn't have met without the heartbreak they leave behind. Carl Jung believed that the meeting of two souls is never random. It always carries meaning, even if that meaning is revealed only in hindsight. These connections don't always bring happiness, but they always bring depth. They don't give you what you want, they give you what you're ready for. And that's the paradox. You grieve them like a lost future. But what you really lost was a part of you that was never meant to survive the transformation. They came to mark a turning point, a before and after, and though they leave without warning, they leave you with something irreplaceable, yourself, but more awake, more aware, more whole. So when you think back on them, don't only remember the pain, remember the contract, the unspoken promise between two souls. I will not stay, but I will leave you forever changed. And sometimes that's the most honest kind of love there is. It's not just sadness, it's collapse. The kind that empties you, not gradually, but all at once. The kind that leaves you staring at your ceiling, trying to understand how someone could feel so essential one day and vanish the next. You try to move on, but the weight won't lift. It's not just about losing them. It's about losing the part of yourself that only existed when they were around. You think you're breaking. And in a way, you are. But what you don't realize in the moment is that this collapse is sacred. Carl Jung wrote that individuation, the journey toward your true self, often begins not in triumph, but in heartbreak. Because pain doesn't just strip away illusions, it peels back everything you've outgrown. It forces you into the raw truth of who you are without anyone else's reflection to define you. When you love deeply and lose deeply, something inside you splits. The identity you built around the relationship begins to dissolve. And yes, it hurts like hell. But in that unraveling, there is space for something real to emerge, not the version of you shaped by longing or need, but the version born from standing in the ashes and realizing you're still breathing. This collapse is not failure, it's initiation. It's the soul's way of saying, you're ready now. Ready to let go of what you thought love was. Ready to stop chasing and start integrating. Ready to rebuild, not as a half waiting to be filled, but as a whole willing to be mirrored. So let yourself fall apart. Let it hurt. Let it hollow you out. Because what rises from that emptiness will be more you than you've ever been. The collapse didn't break you. It broke what wasn't meant to last. And what remains, that's where your becoming begins. Eventually, the noise fades. The ache softens. And in the silence they left behind, you begin to hear something else, your own voice. Not the one you used to make them stay, not the one shaped by fear or hope, but the one that was buried beneath all of it. And for the first time in a long time, you start to listen. This is where the real transformation happens. Not in the loving, not even in the losing, but in the space that follows. The space where you stop asking why they left and start asking what they revealed. Because no one comes into your life without leaving fingerprints, and theirs, no matter how brief, changed you. You became someone different, someone deeper, maybe quieter, maybe more guarded, but also more aware. You started paying attention to your own patterns, your own needs, your own boundaries. You started saying no more often. You started loving yourself with the same intensity you once reserved for them. That's the shift. Their absence gave you the room to become, because when they were there, part of you was still performing, still bending to be chosen. But now you don't need to bend. You stand straighter, you speak slower. You know what peace feels like, because you had to find it inside yourself. Jung taught that the psyche is always trying to become whole, and often it uses heartbreak to clear the path, not to punish you, but to strip away the false layers, to carve out the old stories you outgrew, so that what remains isn't just survival, it's clarity. And with that clarity comes a different kind of strength, not the kind that resists pain, but the kind that honors it. You didn't just survive them, you evolved through them, and that evolution, quiet, personal, hard-earned, is the real love story, not the one you had with them, the one you finally started having with yourself. We've been taught to measure love by how long it stays, how tightly it holds, how much it gives. But real love, the kind that changes you, isn't about possession. It's not about owning someone's heart or having your name written across their future. It's about presence, about what you feel when they're there and what remains after they're gone. True love doesn't cling. It expands. It doesn't trap you in expectations or contracts. It sets you free from them. But that kind of love is rare because it asks for something most people aren't willing to give, the willingness to let go, even when everything in you wants to hold on. And that's why it's so powerful, because it chooses you in freedom, not in fear. Sometimes the deepest love isn't the one that stays forever. It's the one that leaves when it needs to, not out of abandonment, but out of honesty. Not because it stopped caring, but because it honored its purpose. It came to awaken, to shift, to open something sacred inside you. And once that work was done, its presence became a gift too heavy to carry forward. You may think letting go means the love was lost, but often letting go is the purest form of love, the kind that asks, what's best for both of us, instead of, how do I keep you? The kind that sees the soul, not just the body. The kind that understands that timing matters, growth matters, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Carl Jung wrote that wholeness comes from embracing contradiction, and loving someone without needing to possess them is exactly that, a paradox that frees you. It's painful, yes, but it's also liberating, because in that release, you begin to love yourself without needing someone else to reflect it back. The love that stays isn't always the one that lasts. Sometimes it's the one that leaves, but leaves you better, leaves you braver, leaves you more open to love that doesn't need to be held tight, to be real. Healing doesn't mean you never think of them. It means you no longer search for them in every empty space. You no longer need their reflection to remember your worth. You've stopped chasing closure because you've found something better. Completion within yourself. This is individuation. The process Carl Jung called the journey toward inner wholeness. It's when you stop looking outward to fill the gaps. When the longing shifts from needing someone to needing yourself. Not in isolation, but in integration. The past, the pain, the passion, it all becomes part of you. Nothing wasted, nothing erased, just repurposed into wisdom. Letting go isn't just about moving on, it's about reintegrating all the pieces of yourself you gave away. It's about standing in your own story and realizing you're not waiting to be rescued anymore. You're not hoping someone else will complete the sentence. You are the sentence. You are the author. You are the home you've been searching for. And maybe now you see it clearly. They were never the missing piece. They were the mirror that helped you see where you'd been hiding from yourself. And now that the mirror is gone, what's left is the real work, the sacred work, of becoming whole on your own terms. There's power in that, a quiet, grounded kind of power, the kind that no longer needs validation, the kind that no longer panics when love leaves, because you've seen what you're capable of. You've walked through collapse. You've sat in silence. You've rebuilt with nothing but your own two hands. And when love comes again, as it will, you won't cling to it out of fear. You'll meet it from a place of wholeness. You won't need it to fix you. You'll invite it to walk beside you. Letting go wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the only relationship that will last a lifetime, the one you have with your truest self. Some love stories don't come with a happy ending. They come with a mirror, with a memory, with a lesson wrapped in longing. And maybe that's the point. Not every love is meant to last forever. But every love, if you let it, can last within you. We spend so much time mourning what ended that we forget to honor what it gave us. The laughter, the lessons, the way your heart cracked open and let light in. Maybe they didn't stay. Maybe the future you imagined together dissolved. But what they left behind, that's yours to keep. A version of you that loved fully, felt deeply, risked everything, even knowing it might not last. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. In the reflection they held up, in the silence they left behind, in the growth that came when you thought you couldn't grow anymore. That's the hidden gift. Not in the longevity of the love, but in the depth it demanded from you, the way it stripped away the surface and brought you face to face with your truest self. Carl Jung taught that our greatest teachers are often the ones who challenge our identity, who dismantle the structures we built just to feel safe. That's what these temporary loves do. They arrive to disrupt, to rearrange, to tear down walls you didn't even know you'd built. And once they're gone, you realize you're standing in the open, exposed, yes, but also free. We think of endings as failures, but some endings are simply transformations in disguise. The relationship didn't fail. It fulfilled its role. It pushed you towards something deeper. It reminded you of your worth, even if it did so by breaking your heart. So take this with you. What didn't last still matters. What hurt you also helped you. What ended too soon might have been perfectly timed after all. Because without that chapter, you wouldn't be here now. Wiser, clearer, more whole. And maybe that's the real love story, not the one you had with them, but the one you now carry in your bones, in your breath, in the way you look at the world. You didn't just survive it, you became someone because of it. And that someone is exactly who you were always meant to be. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even more shocking.